Welcome to the Patriots Pulse post-game show. I'm your host, John Serenitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, WEEI's John Lyons. John, how you doing on this Sunday evening?
Yeah, not bad, John. It was nice to see the Patriots get a hard-fought win over the Jets. I mean, look, the Jets are a mess, of course, but Patriots get a good, solid win. They execute down the stretch when they need to. So, considering all the turmoil that's been there the past 3-4 weeks, I think it's a nice win for not just the team today, but for the program as they try to build it moving forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you wholeheartedly. Huge win against a rival in the New York Jets. They also averted disaster. Had the Jets won today, this would have been the first time since 2000 that New York swept the season series from the Patriots. So I know that they're 2-6 now, and people are like, what are you talking about, averting disaster? The season has been a disaster. Well, it would have been an even bigger disaster if you were swept by the Jets. And we do want to remind you that feel free to join the conversation. We know that you have plenty of post-game options out there, and they're all terrific options. But if you want a place where you can voice your opinion, tell us how you feel, share your thoughts, you can watch us live on Facebook, X, our YouTube page, and Twitch. So feel free to join the conversation. We would love to hear from you. And obviously the biggest story of this game, John, is the departure of rookie quarterback Drake May in the second quarter. He left with a concussion after Daniel Whitehead, the Sherwood, rather, not Whitehead. I don't know why I said Whitehead. Linebacker for the Jets ended up tackling him from the side when May broke the pocket on a scramble. He stayed in that series, which I thought was a little peculiar considering the NFL now has spotters when it comes to identifying concussions. He was later pulled, went into the blue tent, went out back, and that was the last we saw of him. He was unofficially ruled out by Gerard Mayo at halftime in an interview, and then the team officially ruled him out to start the third quarter. It's nice to get the win today. It would have felt better if you got it with him in the lineup, but just some thoughts on him getting hurt and what does this mean for Drake May moving forward?
Yeah, well, first, before he got hurt, I thought he was playing pretty well. I mean, they moved the ball down the field. He, of course, had that exciting rushing touchdown. He did have the really nice deep ball that Tyquan Thornton just had hit off his chest earlier in that drive. So I thought May was playing pretty well at that point. He only had 23 yards passing, 46 yards rushing. So it's not like he was lighting up the scoreboard, but I thought he was playing really well. And as far as him going out, look, I was surprised there wasn't a penalty on the play. And then you mentioned it. He stayed in the game, even though he was kind of slow to get up. I was a little surprised there. It's obviously the biggest story from the game and something we should monitor going forward. Hopefully it's something that he can be back next week or at the latest the week after, but definitely something to monitor. And I think this is the thing. And there's a lot of fans around the league, fans of the Ravens, the Bills know this. When you have a quarterback that likes to run, this is sometimes can be a risk. So that's why, again, the legs of May and the run game is exciting, and I think it's really valuable. You just got to make sure you balance it out and you're not leaning on it too much. And I'm not saying that's what happened here, but I just think that's, again, something to remember once he gets back moving forward.
And, of course, May opened the scoring in this game with a 17-yard touchdown run on a broken play where he went down the Jets sideline and squeaked one in for the touchdown. And, look, you mentioned it. I mean, he only threw for 23 yards. He was 3 of 6 passing for 23 yards. At one point, he was their leading rusher until the fourth quarter, but he did finish with 3 carries for 46 yards and the touchdown. And I agree with you. I mean, look, it's a concussion. You got to handle it with kid gloves. We know how important it is to manage concussions at every level of football because of the long-term ramifications that it means for the player. I don't know if we're going to see him next week. It depends on the severity of it and whether or not he has a concussion history and whether or not the independent neurologist and team doctors clear him. You could very well see Jacoby Brissett next Sunday in Tennessee, but I do think, or you would think, he'd be back in 2 weeks when they visit the Chicago Bears in that rookie quarterback versus rookie quarterback matchup against Caleb Williams. But of course, Caleb Williams is going up against Jaden Daniels right now. So it's going to be great to see these guys go head-to-head and compete. But nonetheless, it's not good. One of the concerns we had when they inserted him in the lineup a couple of weeks ago was his health. Can he stay healthy playing behind this offensive line? Can he stay healthy with his playing style? 2 weeks into his career, he'd already been getting knocked around. He gets hurt. He's out with a concussion. Jacoby Brissett comes in. And obviously it wasn't easy there. Those first couple of series, Patriots opt not to attempt to go into 2-minute with 1:51 left in the first half, which drew the ire of the crowd here at Gillette Stadium. But Brissett really settled in the second half, I thought. And Alex Van Pelt got more comfortable with him. It reflected in the play calling. I thought he played better in the second half. He leads the Patriots to this come-from-behind win, completing 15 of 24 passes for 132 yards and no touchdown passes. He had a passer rating of 77.1. But, John, look, I don't want to talk about what Jacoby Brissett was. I want to focus on what he is now. And what he is now is a pretty good backup. If you need him in a situation like we saw today, he certainly has the experience, the institutional knowledge of the offense to step in and play and give you a chance. He not only gave them a chance today, he led them to a win.
Yeah, I think what we saw today is the reason Jacoby Brissett has been in the league as long as he has, right? He's not going to be your franchise quarterback. He's not going to be the guy that leads you for a 17-game season and wins a bunch of games and goes deep in the playoffs. But if your starter goes down or you need him in a pinch, he can come in and he can play well enough to win. Again, he wasn't elite out there, but he played well enough to win. I think he deserves a lot of credit. And John, I think the key play here, there was some big special teams plays. The key play here to me, Marcus Jones, a 62-yard punt return early in the second half. That set up a short Patriots touchdown drive. And it felt like after that, so it's a 26-yard touchdown drive, nothing major, but it felt like that gave them some confidence. Then a couple drives later, they have the long field goal drive, then they have the long touchdown drive. So it felt like that punt return and then that short field touchdown really changed the game for the Patriots. Even though they did go down after that, it felt like Van Pelt and Brissett and the whole offense had a little bit more confidence after that.
Yeah, and to your point, this was a three-phase win. You get the 62-yard return by Jones. Your defense coming up with some big plays when you needed them, and we're going to talk about them in a few minutes here. And then, of course, the offense doing what they needed to do. But that was nice to see. Look, this is not a good football team. It's not a knock on them. They lack some talent to keep positions. I think they have some good veterans. I think they have some tough players. I do want to get into the soft talk from this week either because I think it needs to be addressed. With that said, they need to play well in all three phases to win football games. They did that today. And we've said this all season, John. These are the kind of games they're going to win. They're not going to beat people by 7 to 10 or more. They're not going to always get blown out necessarily, although you could say that last week was a blowout against Jacksonville. But this is a team that is good enough to hang around and compete. But for them to win, they're going to have to execute in all three phases. They did it today. It was nice to see. Special teams has kind of gotten off the hook here a little bit this season. I don't think that people are talking about their lack of production as much as they probably should be. But, boy, Coach Springer's unit definitely stepped up today. And as you mentioned, they gave them that spark they needed that put them in a position to get some points.
Yeah, and I want to point out one kind of unheralded moment, but I think it made a big difference. The Jets had 3rd and 7 at the Patriots 17 early in the fourth quarter. Christian Ellis sacks Aaron Rodgers for a 9-yard loss.
You said that on Twitter.
Yeah, and Zerline then misses a 44-yard field goal, hooks it kind of left. And look, I don't know this for sure, but it looked like the type of kick that maybe if that sack doesn't happen and he's kicking a 9-yard shorter field goal, maybe that's good. And the game goes a little bit differently towards the end. Let's not forget, Zerline missed an extra point, too, in this game. The Jets gave up that long return. So the Jets special teams was really abysmal for most of today. And look, not taking anything away from the Patriots, but the Jets are in a really bad spot. In this game today, I think said just as much about the Jets and their lack of execution and their lack of mental toughness as it did the good things about the Patriots and their execution and their mental toughness. Because these types of games, John, similar to Cincinnati in week 1, takes 2 to tango, right? Patriots played well. They did little things right. And the other team blew opportunities. In today's case, it was the Jets. So not to take anything away from the Patriots, but man, that Jets team is in a really, really bad spot.
Yeah, and the AFC East as a whole is a terrible division this season.
Yeah.
Of Buffalo's already clinched it for all intents and purposes.
Yeah,
they'd have to fall
wrong.
apart. Right. They'd have to fall apart down the stretch here to not win the division. They're going to win it again, and it'll be what? I think their fourth or fifth straight
every year since
title.
2020. Or, yeah, right?
Yeah,
because
so
2019, the Pats won it. Yeah.
Yeah, so 2020, 21, 22, 23, it'll be their 5th straight AFC East title. They're on a Patriot-esque type of run here, but this division sucks. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, we knew the Patriots were going to struggle going into it. That was a given. We did not think that Miami would be 2-5 at this juncture, and we certainly didn't think that. Well, I did. I didn't think the Jets were going to be as good as people thought.
I was wrong about the Jets.
But nationally, a lot of people thought the Jets were going to be much better than they are. They're 2-6, and they are a train wreck. They're a total train wreck. I mean, if you're Aaron Rodgers, you got to be sitting there saying to yourself, "Why did I come here? I'm not saying this because I'm a Packers guy, but he probably should have walked away at the end of when it was at the end in Green Bay, because he's still playing at a relatively high level. He's clearly lost a step. That's obvious. But you watch him today, man. Some of the throws he made,
he didn't look
putting them in the right spot, fitting him in the right spots. The accuracy is still there. He still has the ability to make plays down the field in the passing game. He's not totally washed, and I think that that's important here. I think that that gets lost on people, but they're a mess. I mean, this team has way too much talent to be 2-6. Coaching was obviously a problem. They fire Saleh. They bring in Jeff Ulbrich, who was the defensive coordinator. They wanted to see if he could be the guy. Doesn't look like that's going to be the case. But offensively, they're a disaster. They were exactly, in many ways, what the Patriots defense needed for them to bounce back.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's a much different team than what we saw on a Thursday night in week 3 when the Patriots went there, played terribly, and then the Jets played, pretty well in that game and won. It looked like two different teams today. And yeah, the Patriots defense today, I thought, look, they gave up, what was it, 336 total yards, not terrible. Jets are 4 of 10 on third down. Again, not terrible. Held the Jets to 3 of 5 in the red zone, which I thought was pretty good. So it was a much better performance, I felt like, from the Patriots defense than what we've seen over the past 3 or 4 weeks. Still 8 penalties for the Patriots as a whole, but no turnovers in this game. They had the one bad punt coverage rep early on, which then the Patriots defense stood up and forced a 3-and-out on the Jets' first possession. Other than that, the special teams played pretty well. So I think, just going back to your original point, this was really a 3-phase win, because there was really only one down moment for me defensively, and that was the Jets' last scoring drive. I was hoping for a stop there, but then your offense picks them up and goes down and scores a touchdown to win, in which Jacoby Brissett, by the way, was terrific. And the receiver group, I thought, was abysmal most of this game, but then Kayshon Boutte does make 2 huge catches on that final drive to hopefully redeem himself, and maybe they can start to bounce back from there. We'll see, of course.
Yeah, and the receivers were not good for most of this game.
Yeah.
You mentioned the drops. Boutte had drops.
The Thornton one was bad. Bourne,
the Thornton one was bad. Bourne had a bad drop. They were not playing well. It was nice to see them come up when they needed to come up big late in the game. But this receiving core has been talking a lot about getting opportunities and getting touches and being showcased. They certainly did not look like that they merited any more touches than they're getting for 3 quarters in this game. I don't want to hear from those guys this week. Okay, yes, they came up big when they needed to with some big grabs down the stretch, but please don't waste my time this week telling me how you're not featured enough and you can't help the team win if they're not looking in your direction, you're not getting touches. When you had those opportunities, you didn't make those plays for 3 quarters. It was nice to see in the end, but this group needs to be a lot more consistent, because their inability to be consistent has been a big problem for this offense all season. And for 3 quarters today, it reared its ugly head.
Yeah, I agree completely. And again, I think Jacoby Brissett deserves a lot of credit here, because when he came in initially, there was, hey, Stoner, how are you? When he came in initially, it was there was that letdown kind of just in the whole stadium. They go 3-and-out, they punt, then they go 3-and-out, then they just run out the clock at the end of the half. I mentioned that punt return earlier. They punch that in. Then they punt 2 more times, but then they have the long field goal drive, the long touchdown drive. And Brissett, it's funny, a lot of the stuff he did the first few weeks, he was similar today. The difference was, I thought the offensive line played just a little bit better than they had early on when Brissett was starting, and he hit that big throw to Boutte down the middle of the field. I thought, and of course, the Marcus Jones punt return. So it felt like, again, he's not elite, not flashy, but it felt like he was similar to the first, say, 2-3 weeks of the season, but he got a lot more help today, and that helped lead them to the win.
And Kevin Stone joins the show here now. And Kevin, good to see you, man. Just some thoughts on this one.
So I don't want to kind of rehash what you guys have already talked about, but my biggest takeaway today is there's some fight in this team. And we didn't know that coming in, especially during the week. You have all the crap that's being said about the staff, about the players, you need a trade deadline stuff. And I wasn't sure what we'd get today. So it's nice to see that they were willing to come out and actually put a representative performance out there and not just sort of roll over. That's my biggest takeaway ultimately. I talked to a few guys in the locker room as well. Alex Van Pelt deserves some credit too. He gets a lot of crap. And again, offensively, he's dealt another bad hand today, having to deal with Jacoby. But is it pretty? No. But at the end of the game, you still won the game. So I think, and speaking to players, we'll have something up on anyfootballjournal.com later tonight. He doesn't get enough respect. Is it pretty? No. Is there stuff they can do better? Sure. But I don't think he's their biggest problem by far. It's the talent. And again, that talent found a way today to ultimately win a game. So, look, they're 2-6. Does it mean they make the playoffs now? No. But I think it means we'll have a representative season. And I don't know if we knew that coming into this game.
Yeah, for me, I think the representative season piece, I disagree with. I think this is still going to be a team that probably matches their record from last year. But realistically speaking, I still, to your point, Kevin, there just isn't enough talent for them to have a snowball effect here and start playing better and build on this and all of a sudden get to 500. I still don't see that. They do have a winnable game next week. And Tennessee stinks. They're now in the conversation for arguably the worst team in the league, along with the Patriots and Carolina. But if they win next week, right now you're 3-6. Maybe you have a chance to get some momentum, but you got Chicago and LA after that. Bears are playing pretty well. Rams had a big win on Thursday night. I think they're going to get it going now. They're always a team that, especially in the last couple of years, have been notorious slow starters. So while they have a winnable game next week, I'm not sure that the schedule is set up for them to make a run. But nonetheless, this is a big win. And I know there'll be some Patriot fans out there that are pissed that they won because they want that number one pick. But at the end of the day, even though we've said it all along that they're punting on this season, you still want to win football games. You don't want a losing culture to seep in. That's the thing. If losing becomes habitual, that's a problem. Then that adds to the rebuild because now there's more that you have to deal with. It's not just about acquiring players and being better on the field. It's also about reinforcing the culture and changing the culture even more than you already have to. So we definitely don't want that per se. But I do think what's important to realize here is that it shows you that this team hasn't quit on Gerard Mayo, that this team is still playing for him. And I know we're approaching the halfway point of the season, but that was starting to become a topic of conversation. Is this team quitting on Gerard Mayo? I think today, John, they made an emphatic statement that they're not quitting on this guy as their coach. They're still playing for him. And look, Kevin and I both spoke to a bunch of players in the locker room. We also heard a bunch of players speak. None of them were critical about the comments, the soft comments that he made this week. They all took it in stride. They understood that he's trying to motivate him. They all praised him as a good motivator and a guy they want to play for. If people thought outside these four walls that this team was starting to quit on him, it doesn't look like they're quitting on him. They're playing for him, and today was proof of that.
Yeah, to your first point, I agree completely. Think first of all, tanking doesn't work in football. Second of all, it's just a really bad idea because if losing becomes habitual, I call it the losing DNA, then you know what you become? The Jets. I mean, even when they're good, they still find ways to lose. Like you just consistently lose and it snowballs on itself. So that is important. And I also think like you look at some of the guys that made contributions today, right? Drake May before he went out, I thought was playing well. Kayshon Boutte, I thought made some significant contributions. I thought the O-line played, again, not great, but well enough, including Ben Brown. Defensively, Christian Ellis, I thought Christian Gonzalez had a pretty good game. Those are guys that are going to be part of the future as you move forward. So I think that's another piece of this too, that as you go through this season, you want to see guys like that make contributions. I thought Marcus Jones had a tough game. He didn't play well, but even that is valuable experience going against a guy like Garrett Wilson, I guess, in itself, at least. But that's a big part of it. And yeah, as far as Mayo and I didn't love the soft comments publicly. I didn't think that was the best idea. However, I mean, I think it's clear these guys responded. They played hard all game. They adapted to a quarterback injury. They executed late offensively and even defensively. That last Jets scoring drive, I thought, was a bad defensive drive. But when Aaron Rodgers got the ball back, it was only 2 reps, but the defense executed well enough and they finished the game off and they won. They made a couple big special teams plays, albeit they had one bad one, but it just felt like they were fighting throughout. They responded. And some of the little stupid mistakes we've seen over the past 3-4 weeks, not that they were non existent, but it felt like there was fewer of them today than we've seen over the last month or so.
Yeah, John, just to your point about Christian Gonzalez, he was asked after the game how he thought he did against Devontae Adams. All he said was, "We got to win." It's so to other John's point about playing for Mayo, the focus was winning this game and this game only. And I think when you're 2-6 or 1-6 coming in, those individual stats and the individual performances, those can take precedent, and they didn't today. So I think that's big too. Just to go back in terms of representative season, John, you said it better than I did. They didn't quit on Mayo today, and that was sort of my biggest takeaway. Is again, a lot of guys could have started playing for themselves and didn't today. So I thought that was big.
You are watching the Patriots Pulse postgame show. I'm your host, John Serenitas. As always, I'm joined by my partner, WEI's John Lyons, and we are also joined by Kevin Stone. Again, we know you have plenty of postgame options out there, but if you're looking for a place where you could share your thoughts, your comments regarding today's game, feel free to join us. We are live on X, Facebook, Twitch, and our YouTube page. So jump on, join the show, get into the chat section, and share your thoughts on today's big win. I mean, again, you know what? The season looked like it was on the same trajectory as the 1990 Patriots earlier this week, but all of a sudden it's amazing. Less than a week later, you pick up a win over the Jets, who have been your perennial bitch for a long time, and all of a sudden everybody feels good. Stone feels good. He's talking about this being a turning point. Me and Lyons aren't as curmudgeon-y about it.
I didn't go that far.
Oh.
Yeah, they knocked off the Rod Rust. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't resist that one. I'm sorry.
No.
Sorry.
But here's the thing. I was 15 during that season. I remember it very
Yeah, and look, this is
well.
the thing, too. I think, and the three of us have talked about this before, nobody expected them to come into this season and win 9, 10, 11 games and be legit, okay? Like, nobody expected that. You have a rookie head coach, a rookie DC, rookie special teams coordinator, and not a rookie OC, but a guy who's called plays once. You got a bunch of young players in key spots. So what you wanted to see is, can this team make progress? And I think, look, if we're being honest with ourselves, the way they looked against San Francisco, even go back to the first Jets game, Houston, the way they looked in London was worse than I think we expected. And I think worse than most of their games last year, save for the Dallas and Saints game back-to-back last year. So that was concerning. So for them to bounce back and look like this today and win, again, not perfect, but you see some progress. You see some guys bought in. I think that is an important thing to focus on here, because look, let's just say they win 2 or 3 more games this year and they end with 5 wins, but they're competitive and you end the season feeling good about Drake May and you think Mayo's taking the team in the right direction, then you have something to build on. But if they end the season like they played the last 3 weeks, then you have a lot more questions and a lot more concerns. So look, we're not sitting here saying they're going to win 10 games, but today's win is one of those where you beat a team more talented than you. They made more mistakes than you. You took advantage of those mistakes, and you did just enough to win. I think that is a nice, I don't want to say it's a big building block, but at least a nice little step in this process of trying to build a program.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think the other thing to keep in mind here is that, as we talked about earlier, right, you don't want the losing to become the norm around here. You don't want it to seep into the soil. So I think that's the other part of why a win like this is big. And I know, and for those people out there that are draft watching and saying, geez, this hurts their chances of ending up with a top 3 pick again. Next year's draft is not this year's draft. Remember, you wanted that top 3 pick in this past year's draft because you needed the franchise quarterback. Mac Jones wasn't going to be the guy. This next year, it's more about fortifying the offensive line and receiver, 2 positions that are going to be positions of strength in that draft. But receiver, for example, I know everybody wants Travis Hunter, but if you don't get Travis Hunter, there's still some really good receivers that are going to be going in the top 10, 15 picks, whether it be McMillan from Arizona or Burden from Missouri. There's talent there. Offensive tackle, Campbell last night, Campbell and Jones, two of the top 3 offensive tackles potentially in next year's draft class. Both of them were on national television last night for LSU. Both played pretty well, particularly Campbell. So they don't necessarily need to even be picking in the top 5 to get one of those guys. They can get them from the 5 to 12, 5 to 15 range. So for me, yeah, you know what? If you can find a way to go 5 and 12, 6 and 11 with this team, and it's amazing how much the temperature changes in 1 week, then great. I do want to go back to the soft comment because we didn't have a chance to talk about it. And we've all universally said this. We don't necessarily agree with the way that Gerard handles the media, with the way that he says one thing and then he backtracks and says something else. And I think part of the problem is when you're a rookie head coach, you don't always necessarily handle the media the way you should. And there is no playbook on how to handle the media. Every coach has a different style in terms of their philosophy and the way they coach and the way they handle the media. And it doesn't matter whether it's high school, college, or the pros. The way you deal with the media is important. And, you know, I said this to Kevin last week. When I was a first-year head coach, granted it was high school, I sucked at handling the media. It's amazing now that I'm in the media and doing media things. But I just told it like I saw it. You know, we lose 20-19 to Framingham. Why did you lose, coach? Well, you know what? We let it run down our leg with the extra points, and we decided we didn't want to tackle their good running back in the second half, and they beat us. And, you know, when that ends up in the paper, you get shit from your AD. But I think at the end of the day, he's still evolving as a coach. Remember, like you said, John, he's a rookie head coach. But the soft comment, you and I have coached. We know what he was trying to do there, but I think all 3 of us would agree you don't need to go public with that. And I feel like he went public with it because he was trying to take some pressure off himself, maybe. Again, I'm spitballing here, but that was not something that he needed to put out there. We could see it with our own 2 eyes that they haven't exactly been playing tough of late, especially defensively and against the run.
Yeah, and here's the thing. You had a head coach for 24 years that handled the media one way. Now you have a head coach that handles it the opposite way, okay? I think you can find a little bit of ground in the middle because I think you can't be too open and too transparent and say things like, because then it just creates unnecessary stuff. Like for, you know, and we don't have to relitigate the whole thing here, but, you know, when they say we're going to have less of a hard ass vibe, I know that was Elliott Wolf, but then that creates an issue around the team. They get asked a bunch of questions. When you say it's a QB competition, then you say it's not. Then you say Mayo plays Brissett, but Brissett's the starter. Like then it creates unnecessary questions all around your locker room. Same thing with the soft thing. I mean, he could have worded that and just say, you know, we need to play tougher. And it's kind of saying the same thing publicly,
right.
But it doesn't, again, it just, for whatever reason, it doesn't sound as bad, and therefore it doesn't create as much of a distraction. I think that's something, again, and I've said this on EEI before. Yeah, it's not smart, and yeah, he's putting his foot in his mouth multiple times, but some of this is growing pains. And what I want to see is 6 weeks from now, does he handle a situation like that better? Because 6 weeks from now, 7 weeks from now, when they play the Bills twice in 3 weeks, chances are they're going to have some tough times against those Bills team, against the Bills. So does he handle it better than he did after the Jags game? And I think that's something to look for because I think he just could have worded that better. And then, of course, he backtracks it the next day on the Greg Hill show, and it sounded better what he said on the Hill show, but coming on the heels of what he did say after the game, it's just, again, I think he could have worded it better. I think it would have created less of a distraction. And the goal is, and the hope is, he learns from that moving forward.
Yeah, Joe, I think the biggest problem, you just said it, is he backtracks. And he does it quite a bit. At least on a weekly basis since training camp. So for him, I think if you're going to deliver the message, deliver it and stick by it, no matter what interview you're doing. But he's also admitted, you know, he's trying to use the media to send a message to his players. But then he's also said it's nothing that I won't say to them first, which is something Christian Gonzalez said post-game today. He said, look, we didn't take it personally because he sent it to us first. So just both of your coaching opinions. Yes, it's the wrong word, but, and John, I think we talked about this last week, using the media to get your message across, yay or nay?
Oh, I'm okay with it. I
Yeah,
don't
I'm
have a
okay with
problem
that.
with it. Yeah, I'm okay with it too. And they were playing soft. He's not wrong. That they were soft.
No,
They were soft. They were soft as puppy crap, especially against the run. I mean, they got run through the last 3 weeks. So he's not wrong. And and look, if he were an established coach that had won before and he said that, I don't have a problem with it. I just think we're living in a sensitive time. You're a rookie head coach. You haven't won anything. You haven't proven yourself yet. To put yourself out there like that in a big media market like this, it's going to jump all over it and harp on it all week. That's where I don't think it was smart. But if he were here 5, 6 years, they'd made the playoffs 2 or 3 years, then I'd say, you know what? Okay, he's got enough cachet that he could say something like that and it'll be fine. But I think that's where his mistake was. I think that it was out of character for him because the one thing with Mayo is he has gone out of his way to be completely different than Belichick. And I think to a degree, when he made the comment, I think a lot of people were like, what, wait, he really just called this team out in the media and he just called them soft? And how is he calling him soft? We've never, he said he wasn't going to be a hard ass. So it went back to January in his interim press conference. So I think that's where his mistake was. And John, I think you bring up a great point. If you word it differently, it probably gets no traction. The fact that he worded it the way he did got traction.
Yeah, it's almost like it's kind of ironic. He's too transparent sometimes. Again, like you can say the team needs to play tougher, and you're saying essentially the same thing, but it just sounds a lot better and it creates less of a controversy. And the other piece of this, too, like it also would be one thing. And John, first of all, I completely agree with you that if he had been here 5 years or he had won a Super Bowl before or whatever, it would sound a lot different. But also, even like if they were 4-4 right now, or let's say they were 5-2 and he said that, then even then it sounds different. But when you're 2-5 and your team is making coaching mistakes too, like there's questions about adjustments and play calling and penalties and all that, and then you say it, then that makes it look even worse on top of it. So again, I think it's something that he can probably learn from going for, at least I hope he would learn from it going forward. And some of this is expected growing pains, but also again, I mean, you're a head coach. You got to be careful with what you say. What you say as a head coach matters. It's always going to matter publicly. So if you're going to be more transparent than, and not, he's not just more transparent than Bill, he's more transparent than a lot of coaches in the league. And if you're going to be that way, fine, but you do have to be careful about it. And I think he's kind of over the last, say, 6 months or so, he's really, I think at times learned that the hard way.
Yeah, and our good friend Lauren Gaudette joins the show. Hi, guys. I missed the game or heard some of it on the radio. How dare you, Lauren? But how was the situational football today? How would you grade the coaches today? I thought that the situational football was better. And thanks for joining the show as always. We appreciate you, Lauren. The situational football was better, and I thought the coaching was better. But again, I mean, you're not exactly talking about a high bar here. The staff hadn't set a high bar in recent weeks. But I thought that they coached better in situations, and I thought overall the coaching was better in general.
the only thing I didn't love was before the half. Like at some point, give me something before halftime in this season. Something. But other than that, I was okay with just about everything today.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point, Kevin, because I've been pretty critical of them. Like, I thought they totally mismanaged the end of the first half against Seattle. Seattle ended up getting a field goal. I thought they totally mismanaged the end of the first half against Miami. Now, Miami didn't score, but that's because they missed a field goal. They ended up getting a field goal range. But today, like the Jets had no timeouts. Give me one passing play. Like I was even okay with the run on first down, see if you get anything. But second down, I think, don't quote me, I think it was like 2nd and 6 or something. Like throw the ball there, see if you can get a chunk play. And you know what? If you don't, then you can try to run the ball and you can run the clock out and go to halftime anyway. So that like, and I feel like that's one of those things. Again, you got a guy calling plays that hasn't done it in 15 years and it's only his second time ever. Maybe a more experienced play caller gets that situation right. But I thought their situational football, to echo John, I thought it was not elite, but I thought it was better than it's been in recent weeks. And I thought it's a reason why they won the game. They were good at the end of the game on offense. They had one bad punt coverage rep early in the game. Other than that, I thought they were good on special teams. Third down offense, they were 7 for 15 on third down on offense. That's really good. Defensively, 4 for 10 on third down. They did give the Jets 4 first downs on penalties, which was bad. So again, not elite, but I thought they were definitely better today in situational football than in recent weeks.
Yeah, no, I agree. As far as that situation at the end of the first half, I'm kind of torn because I see both of your perspectives on it, and I tend to lean the same way as you guys. They probably should have, especially because the Jets had no timeouts.
Yeah.
They couldn't stop the clock. They burned the ball in the first quarter. You want to talk about bad situational coaching and bad clock management. Again, that's why they're the Jets. I don't know why people are Jets fans. I don't know why you would ever root for that
Especially
franchise.
when the Giants are in the same city and like they actually win a Super Bowl once every 15 or 20 years, you know?
Right. I don't understand it, but I digress. I agree that they probably should have either run it on first down, throw a pass play on second down. You get nothing. You run it. You take your time running that punt team out there. I think their thought process was that if they sequenced it that way and it didn't work and they had to punt, that the Jets were probably going to get the ball around the 30, 35 with, probably 35, 40 seconds left with Aaron Rodgers. Van Pelt coached Rodgers. He knows him very well. They're actually pretty close. I think their thought process was, well, maybe, you know what, we don't want to give one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time 55 yards to work with if we have to go 3 and out and punt. So, well, yes, on the one hand, I think that they probably in that situation should have tried more. I also see their logic. I mean, again, if you're going up against Jimmy Tippy Toes on the other side, nobody cares, but it's Aaron Rodgers. Before we wrap up here, I do want to talk about the defense. They've been getting torched in recent weeks. Belichick, of course, comes out this week, and he's all of a sudden a media darling. It's amazing to me, by the way, how much Patriot fans last year, there were a lot of people that couldn't wait to run him out of town. All of a sudden, Belichick is a media darling and a media genius, and everybody's listening to him, and they want to know what he has to say. But, of course, he came out and made some choice comments about the team, Mayo's comments about them being soft and their lack of run fits and their inability to stop the run. And, hey, we were number one or we were one of the top run-stopping teams in the league last year with the same guys. I thought the defense responded today. I thought they responded today. I thought they rose to the occasion, especially their safeties. You know what I mean? You're playing without Kyle Duggar. You're playing without Jabril Peppers. And I thought that those guys really stepped up. Jalen Hawkins and Del Pettis, those guys stepped up and played well. I talked to Pettis after the game, and one of the things that he said to me was, we don't look at it as stepping up. We look at it as, we're going to play. We're playing more, basically. So I thought that the defense carried the day in a lot of ways. They had a couple of down spots, but overall, when they needed to make a key stop in a big moment or a big situation, they did that.
Yeah, I thought defensively they were much better than the past few weeks. Again, that last Jets scoring drive I thought was a bad drive defensively. Other than that, though, I thought they were pretty good throughout the game. They still gave up 112 yards rushing, but they were better against the run than they've been in recent weeks. I still would like to see a little bit more pressure on the quarterback. Only 1 sack today, but of course, even though Rodgers is not the same guy, he still has that reputation and that mobile DNA, if you will, in them. So maybe they were kind of hanging back a little bit and more contained. That's possible. So again, I thought the defense was better. I thought Christian Gonzalez was great. Christian Ellis had the one DPI that set up a touchdown, which I think he was put in a bad spot there. But other than that, I thought the linebackers were much better than they've been. Tavai had his best game probably in a month or so. I thought Godshaw was better in this game. And let's not forget, too, Joshua Uche was out today. And I thought they, still played pretty well up front. And again, not great, but pretty well and definitely better than they've played in recent weeks.
2 biggest things for me. I thought tackling in general was better. You didn't see a whole ton of, big plays after a catch or during a run. And then the penalties. You mentioned the PI. Those two, I thought both of them were questionable. The Ellis one was PI probably, but the one on Gonzalez was ridiculous early on. But you didn't see any dumb penalties. We've grown accustomed to a lot of self-inflicted mistakes. There really wasn't that many on either side today, but especially on defense. But the tackling to me stood out. I thought it was much, much better.
Yeah, I agree with Kevin in that regard that they played smarter today. The penalties had been a real problem. I mean, Stone and I were having Jeff Hafley BC flashbacks there a couple of weeks ago. But no, I agree wholeheartedly with Kevin's point that they played more discipline. which is something that they've needed to do. And I think you saw that. And look, when you start having team meetings, and you know this, John, when you start having team meetings, that means that you're down in the dumps. That means that people are questioning themselves, are questioning the coaches, and it's an airing of the grievances. And I think that team meetings help. Today's an example of how team meetings can have a positive effect on a season, but there have been plenty of examples where team meetings don't work, where they don't change anything and the team continues to lose. And generally speaking, unlike Major League Baseball, unlike the NBA, unlike the NHL, where those are longer seasons, you play multiple times a week. In football, you don't necessarily always have team meetings. You're in meetings all week. So in those sports, you don't meet nearly as much as you meet in football. So you don't, when, in baseball, if a team loses 6, 7, 8 in a row, they'll have a team meeting in the clubhouse and talk it out. In football, you're constantly in meetings, positional meetings, offensive meetings, defensive meetings, team meetings. So you're always meeting. So, to have an opportunity, and Jonathan Jones spoke after the game last week, and Juwan Bentley spoke this week, I think that helped because it creates a format for the players to step up and say what they think and how they feel. And obviously it worked. You still have a lot of tough guys, as Belichick said, and I agree with him. You still have a lot of tough guys in that locker room that have a lot of pride and play with a lot of pride. And I think that showed up today. Now, again, I think it helps that you're playing the Jets. I mean, the Jets are the Jets. I'm not sure that they were able to pull this out if it were a better opponent, but nonetheless, they played better. So that's the key. Real quick, before we get going here, thoughts on Drake May. Do we see him next week? Lions?
It's always tough to predict with the concussion stuff. And look, I'm not a doctor. It didn't look like a Tua level bad concussion, I guess, if you will, to, use a hopefully not bad phrase, but I think we see him, but with these concussions, it's just so hard to predict. But I will say the Titans, that might be the worst team you play all year. So I think if you get Drake May, I think that's a really good opportunity for him. And technically, this was a win for Drake May starting, but the Titans game would be a good opportunity for him to play a full game and get a win that way.
First of all, I don't know about either of you. I was shocked that he still finished that drive. I mean, you could tell right away. He couldn't really get up very quickly. So the spotter missed that one terribly. I don't think we see him next week. And John, just real quick, to go back to, you brought up the draft. This might be an avenue for them where you're not tanking, but if you don't rush straight back and you happen to lose games with Jacoby, well, now you have it out. The fan base can't really get pissed that you're losing. It's Jacoby. And you're also not rushing the kid back if he's not ready to come back, from protocol. So it's an interesting little spot that they're in now. You'd love to see him against Tennessee, obviously, because it's a winnable game, but I don't rush him back at all, especially with a concussion.
Thanks a lot. Football, I just play one on the radio.
Don't let the Harvard hat fool you. I am not very bright.
But in any event, like I was saying, I don't know, is your microphone muted? There you go. We were doing good here, staying in harmony, and then all of a sudden we both went off the rails. But I'm not a doctor. Obviously, Lyons isn't a doctor, and you certainly would never confuse Stone for being a doctor. But all of that being said, I think we're going to go 3 for 3 here. I'm with you guys. I don't think he plays next week. I just think ultimately, if you're the Patriots, he is the franchise. And you got to do what's best for him first and foremost as a player. And you got to do what's best for him long-term in terms of his health and his mental health. So I don't think you need to rush him back. I think Tennessee comes up at the schedule at the right time because you can probably beat them the way they're playing right now without him. If you can get him back for Chicago in 2 weeks, great. If not, you get him back here for the next home game on November 17th against the Rams, great. But I think the bottom line is I'm with you guys. I think they're going to take their time here. They're going to give him a chance to heal. They're going to let him go through the protocol and the process. And I think that they're going to do right by the kid, which they have to. Again, he is your most important player. He is your future. You need him to stay healthy. We all know how important franchise quarterbacks are in this league. All right, gentlemen, let's put a bow on this one. Final thoughts here. Starting with you, Monsieur Lyons.
Yeah, for me, like I said from the beginning, I thought it was an and I don't want to overstate it, but I think an important little building block win for the program, especially considering all they went through over the past few weeks. Look, the Jets are terrible, and this was just as much about the Jets screwing up and making mistakes as it was the Patriots winning. But you know what? Miami made a lot of mistakes a few weeks ago, and the Patriots didn't take advantage and didn't win. So they did today. I think that's a good thing, especially with all the other off field stuff they've dealt with over the past few weeks. What I'm really interested in seeing, can they build on it against a Tennessee team, which, as you mentioned, John, I think they're capable of beating?
Yeah, I'm with you. It's just, I go back to my original point. It's nice to know that they're not going to quit in October. We're going to have a season, whether it's a good season or not, we should still see competitive games throughout the rest of the year. And I had serious doubts coming into today. I told John before the game, I thought they were going to get blown out today. I really did. Just given the way that this week went, you didn't know how Gerard Mayo's first real fire was going to go. Did he put it out completely? No, because they still have to, string some wins together. But it's nice to know that they're not in complete shambles and they're not one of the laughing stocks of the league just yet.
Yeah, one of the things that got my attention today is that this fan base is still passionate about this football team. They're still passionate about the Patriots. I mean, yeah, there were some empty seats in the 300s, but you had a great crowd on hand. It was a beautiful fall day for football. And the Patriot fans brought it today. They were engaged. They were involved from the beginning. Obviously, the performance of the team gave them a chance to stay in the game longer and be engaged. But it's nice to see that this fan base still loves this team. They're still behind them, and they're going to support them. And I think that support's going to be there regardless of how they finish. Obviously, depending on how they finish, that'll depend on what ends up happening after the season in terms of any coaching changes and player changes. But I was really impressed with the turnout today and how engaged this fan base was in this game. In many ways, I don't want to get nostalgic here, but it brought me back to the Belichick-Brady days when there were close games and the fans were the difference. I think that you felt that today, that the fans, I don't want to say they were the difference, but they played a part in this one in terms of their involvement, especially when the defense was on the field. So it was nice to see. I mean, again, I don't want to get nostalgic here, but certainly kudos to Patriot fans. Hat tip for showing up and showing out today. All right, John, I want to say thank you for taking the time, and we'll see you again next week after the Patriots-Titans game. Kevin, thank you as always for all that you do for New England Football Journal. Great job as usual, my friend. That'll do it for this episode of the Patriots Pulse postgame show. Again, the Patriots defeat the rival New York Jets 25-22. For John Lyons and Kevin Stone, I'm John Serenita. Stone and I will be back with you tomorrow night for the New England Football Show. Until then, peace